government of Venezuela rejected on Tuesday the approval by a United States court of the sale of CITGO Petroleum Corporation, a subsidiary of PDVSA. In the United States, popular disapproval of Donald Trump's administration rises to 60%, while the government crisis persists in the North American nation. And the Libre Party of Honduras denounced Tuesday that the two-party system is imposing an electoral coup against presidential candidate Rixi Moncada. Hello and welcome to From the South. I'm Alejandra Garcia from teleSUR studios in Havana, Cuba. We begin with the news. In Venezuela this Tuesday, the draft agreement repudiating the plundering of the Venezuelan company CITGO by the U.S. government and sectors of the national fascist right was approved during an ordinary session of the National Assembly. During the session, the President of the National Assembly, Jorge Rodriguez, mentioned that Juan Guaidó and Dinora Figuera approved an additional credit of $14 million in reference to the theft of the CITGO company, an asset of the Venezuelan state. Likewise, the first Vice President of the National Assembly, Pedro Infante, pointed out that during the 2015 legislative session, the opposition parties participated in this theft and described what a judge has ordered with respect to the sale of CITGO as a forced sale. He added that such action demonstrates that property rights are not respected in the United States. On the other hand, Infante recalled that constant calls and warnings about the United States' intentions to provoke regime change in Venezuela in order to steal its natural resources. And in this context, the government of Venezuela, through Vice President Delcy Rodriguez, issued a statement rejecting a recent U.S. court's decision regarding the approval of the sale of CITGO Petroleum Corporation, a subsidiary of PDVSA based in the United States. The statement points out that the legal proceedings conducted by the United States were carried out to the detriment of the Venezuelan people and considered a disposal of a strategic Venezuelan asset on U.S. territory. The Vice President emphasized that the Venezuelan government and PDVSA were excluded from the court proceedings and their right to defense was denied. In response, Venezuela announced that it would take all measures at its disposal to bring the promoters and executors of this disposition to justice.
Curiosamente, este tribunal entrega.
Curiously, this court has decided to hand over CITGO to a vulture fund, which is registered in the lobbies that are part of election campaigns and elections. It is registered as a financer of a high-ranking official in the current United States government, so that all Venezuelans can get an idea of this theft. One more added to the theft of the gold from the Bank of England, now an asset in the territory of the United States, whose value as an asset amounts to approximately $12 billion. But CITGO was taken over by extremists posing as the Venezuelan government since 2019. And that company generates approximately between $4 billion and $5 billion every year. Imagine, not only are we losing an asset of $12 billion, the Venezuelan people, but since 2019 they have accumulated dividends of approximately $24 billion. What have they done with that money? They have stolen it.
¿Qué han hecho con ese dinero? Lo han robado.
And after unilaterally ordering the closure of the Venezuelan airspace, the U.S. government requested the Bolivarian nation's permission to continue with the flights to return migrants. Precisely, in an official statement shared by Venezuelan Transportation Minister Ramon Velázquez Araguayan, the Venezuelan Aviation Authority reported it received a request from the U.S. government to resume repatriation flights for Venezuelan migrants from the U.S. to Venezuela. In consequence, on the instructions of President Nicolás Maduro, Venezuela authorized the aircraft operated by Eastern Airlines LLC to enter the Venezuelan airspace on the Phoenix, Arizona Maiquetía route to land at Maiquetía International Airport, as has been occurring on a weekly basis on Wednesdays and Fridays since the agreement signed between the Venezuelan government and the U.S. administration. The Venezuelan Aviation Authority closed the official statement by assuring that this authorization was issued in accordance with the laws of the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela and international civil aviation laws, vowing that the repatriation of migrants to reunite Venezuelan families through the Return to the Homeland plan will continue. And in this scenario, Cuba rejected the intensified U.S. threats and interference against Venezuela to impose regime change. President Miguel Díaz-Canel posted, "The interference, threats, and military aggression that the United States is preparing against Venezuela to overthrow its legitimate government are unacceptable. The policy of gunboats and the discredited Monroe Doctrine are part of the neo-colonial past. Latin America and the Caribbean are a zone of peace." Meanwhile, in the United States, members of Congress, both Republicans and Democrats, are pressuring the Donald Trump administration to clarify the military attacks on alleged drug trafficking boats in the Caribbean. A report published in the U.S. media suggests that the Department of Defense may have authorized the commission of war crimes. In this scenario, the White House was forced to acknowledge that a second attack on a vessel that had already been intercepted would have killed some of the survivors. However, Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth never released the video of this attack. Alerts about the legality of the alleged anti-drug operation in the Caribbean have multiplied, so Congress is demanding answers from Secretary Hegseth. Meanwhile, the leader of the Senate Democrats, Chuck Schumer, has assured that they will block any escalation against Venezuela.
Hegseth needs to resign, and if he doesn't resign, Donald Trump needs to fire him. He is a walking, talking national security embarrassment. He seems more interested in winning video pull-up contests than he does in protecting this nation. He's obsessed with the weight of his soldiers, the facial hair of his soldiers, not concerned with actually keeping the country safe. He's leaking classified information. He's banning reporters from the Pentagon. There's no mainstream outlet right now that is telling you, the American public, what's happening inside the Department of Defense. But maybe most egregious is what we learned in the last week, that Secretary Hegseth gave a grossly illegal order, an illegal order to kill everyone aboard this vessel in the Caribbean, an order that ended up with our military not just shooting at the boat, but then shooting at the human beings who were swimming from their lives amidst the wreckage. That is not allowed under U.S. law. It is deeply immoral. And we simply cannot protect this country adequately.
And in the United States, popular disapproval of Donald Trump's administration rises to 60%, while the government crisis persists in the North American nation. According to polls, President Donald Trump's popularity has fallen to 36%, a historic low for his second term as head of state. The disapproval rating represents the worst record for his administration, contradicting the supposedly positive assessment of his term in office. In addition, the National Congress reached an 80% disapproval rating, which increases the lack of institutional credibility. The poll, conducted between November 3rd and 25th in the United States, reflects the devastating impact of the longest government shutdown in the country's history. And now we have a short break coming up. But first, remember, you can join us on TikTok at teleSUR English, where you'll find news in different formats, news updates, and much more. We'll be right back. Stay with us. Welcome back to From the South. The Bolivarian Alliance for the Peoples of America, ALBA-TPP, congratulated the St. Lucia Labour Party and its leader, Philip J. Pierre, on the electoral victory. Through an official statement, the bloc shared. This result expresses the confidence of the people of St. Lucia in a political project that has defended social justice, the welfare of families, and the sovereignty of their nation. Furthermore, the regional bloc highlighted how, under the leadership of re-elected Prime Minister Philip J. Pierre, St. Lucia has played a leading role within the alliance, raising the voice of the Caribbean in the face of common challenges and strengthening Latin American and Caribbean unity. ALBA closed the communique by reaffirming its will to continue making progress on the shared plans and projects along with the government of St. Lucia and keep working together to consolidate a strong Caribbean and a united, dignified, sovereign and peaceful region. For its part, the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela also congratulated the people and government of St. Lucia on the general elections in an official statement. Venezuela expressed its recognition to the St. Lucia Labour Party (SLP) and its leader, Prime Minister Philip J. Pierre, for their second consecutive victory, based on the trust they have received from the electorate. The Venezuelan government takes this opportunity to reaffirm its unwavering commitment to continue strengthening ties of friendship and bilateral cooperation with St. Lucia in line with the historic principles of integration and solidarity that characterizes us, working to maintain the greater Caribbean as a zone of peace. And now we go to Honduras. The Liberal Party of Honduras denounced Tuesday that the two-party system is imposing an electoral coup against presidential candidate Rixi Moncada. Libre coordinator Manuel Zelaya accused an ex-president Donald Trump of interference and criticized his pardon to former Honduran President Juan Orlando Hernandez, who was convicted in the United States for drug trafficking. Zelaya affirmed that President Xiomara Castro enjoys more than 55% support for her good governance. Honduras respects her and the world recognizes her. The Libre Party presented an honest and capable candidate with a strong character and a deeply democratic campaign based on an economic proposal to liberate the people and break the privileges of the elite. Zelaya claims that's the main reason of the interference, since they cannot win fairly. He described the action as a crude, unjust, and infamous foreign intervention to twist the will of the people and stop Rixi Moncada from becoming president. And we're staying in Honduras. Today is after the general elections. It is still unclear who will be the country's president. The contest remains between the right-wing candidates Nasri Asfura from the National Party and Salvador Nasrallah from the Liberal Party. In this context, the Libre candidate Rixi Moncada denounced serious irregularities in the elections and interference by the United States. In accordance with these statements, Moncada assures that she will not recognize any winner until the review of the records has been completed. In this scenario of political tension, the streets remain calm despite the violence and riots promoted by the far right. The latest information was released on Monday when the National Electoral Council reported that 57% of the vote counts have already been released. According to the Electoral Code, the final results must be made public within 30 days after the end of the elections. And the U.S. President Donald Trump continues his aggressive interference in Honduras and threatens punishment if the announced election results change. On Truth Social, Trump issued a direct warning to Honduras National Electoral Council, demanding that the count continue under its own conditions and making it clear that any change in the trends could trigger retaliation. The U.S. President affirmed that the United States will not support Honduras or allocate resources if the next president does not agree with its political agenda. President Trump insists on intimidating a sovereign country while clear irregularities are known and the period for filing claims and objections under current law is still open. And we stay in the Latin American region. On Monday, the National Electoral Council of Ecuador officially announced the final results of the popular consultation and referendum held on November 16th. The figures confirmed the victory of the no vote in the 4 questions promoted by President Daniel Noboa, reflecting a clear rejection by citizens of the government's proposals. The proclamation was made in a telematic session after no challenges were filed, and in this sense, the results show the erosion of the president's narrative and the growing distance between the government and an electorate that demands real answers to the crisis in the country.
Referéndum Casillero A.
Referendum Box A, total number of voters plus prisoners 13,947,802, equivalent to 100%. Total number of polling stations 42,059, equivalent to 100%. Voters 11,186,444, equivalent to 80.27%, with an absentee vote of 2,750,022, equivalent to 19.73%, with a report of blank vote of 164,504, equivalent to 1.47%, and a report of null votes of 461,370, equivalent to 4.12%. The results are from the referendum box A option yes, 4,136,617, equivalent to 39.18%. Option no, 6,422,640, equivalent to 60.82%.
6,422,640 equivalentes al 60,82%.
Now we have a second short break coming up. Before, we invite you to visit our Facebook page at teleSUR English. There you'll be able to watch our top stories, special live coverage and much more. Follow our page and activate the notification button to stay up to date on the world's most recent events. For a short break, we'll be right back. Welcome back to From the South. In Cuba, after verifying significant progress in the restoration of services, authorities announced on Monday the return to normality of the eastern provinces of Holguín, Granma, and Guantánamo following the impact of Hurricane Melissa. The decision is a response to the sustained efforts of the territorial authorities, which have made it possible to restore infrastructures and guarantee stable conditions for the population. In this context, the provinces that have already returned to normality will continue their reconstruction work with institutional and citizen support. The civil defense authorities recognize the coordinated efforts of the management structures, the media, and the population, highlighting the discipline and solidarity demonstrated during the preparation, response, and recovery phases of the weather event. And we change of topic. The Minister of Foreign Affairs of China, Wang Yi, arrived in Russia to take part in the 20th round of strategic security consultation between the two countries. On Tuesday, Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov met with his Chinese counterpart to discuss the implementation of the goals set by Presidents Vladimir Putin and Xi Jinping at 2 recent summits. In this regard, Foreign Minister Lavrov assured that Moscow's task is to ensure close coordination on international policy issues, including strategic stability and reliable security for the Russian Federation and the People's Republic of China, as well as their joint actions in global structures. For his part, Wang assured that thanks to the strategic leadership of both heads of state, their bilateral relations are at a high level despite adversities and difficulties. Also, U.S. Special Envoy Steve Witkoff arrives in Moscow to meet with Russian President Vladimir Putin with the aim of moving forward the peace plan in Ukraine. The U.S. official was received by the Special Envoy of the Russian Presidency for Investment and International Economic Cooperation, Kirill Dmitriev, on November 23rd. Both delegations met in the Swiss city of Geneva and discussed the 28-point proposal, which was cut down to a 19-point draft that they will discuss with President Putin. The U.S. delegation seeks to advance negotiations with Moscow and the peace plan that, following the recent corruption scandals involving President Zelensky, put Kiev at a disadvantage in this new stage of reaching an agreement. Now we go to the United States. A supermarket chain filed a lawsuit against the Trump administration over tariff policies. North America's largest supermarket chain, Costco, is demanding a full refund from Washington for all taxes paid as a result of the national government's tariff measures. According to the company's legal team, the lawsuit seeks to guarantee the possibility of a refund for all companies that have paid import duties. Let's recall that in mid-August 2025, President Donald Trump imposed trade tariffs on several countries, which led to those nations responding with reciprocal tariffs of between 10 and 14%. In other news, in Nigeria, Defense Minister Badaru Abubakar resigned amid a national emergency due to the increase in kidnappings in the country. In a statement, the government explained that Abubakar left the position for health reasons, a decision that was accepted by President Bola Tinubu, who thanked him for his work and said he would notify the Senate to appoint his replacement. The minister's departure comes just 1 week after the president declared a state of emergency in response to the rising kidnappings in several regions, especially in the west and northwest. In this context, President Tinubu ordered increased recruitment in the armed forces to strengthen security operational capacity. And on Tuesday in Lebanon, Pope Leo XIV concluded the first apostolic journey of his pontificate with a call for peace among peoples and an end to the horrors of war. The Pope visited Lebanon for 3 days as part of the second leg of a foreign trip that began in Turkey. During this journey, Pope Leo XIV warned that the future of humanity is in danger due to the proliferation of conflicts in the world and called on the international community to spare no effort in promoting processes of dialogue and reconciliation. The Pope's last day in Lebanon began with prayer at the port of Beirut, the scene of 2 explosions in August 2020 that left more than 200 people dead and about 300,000 civilians homeless. The Pope also celebrated Mass on the capital's seafront, where thousands of Lebanese received communion.
Dear brothers and sisters, during these days of my first apostolic journey, undertaken during this Jubilee year, I wanted to come as a pilgrim of hope to the Middle East, imploring God for the gift of peace for this beloved land, marked by instability, wars, and suffering. I make a heartfelt appeal to those who hold political and social authority here and in all countries marked by war and violence. Listen to the cry of your peoples who are calling for peace. Dear brothers and sisters.
And like this, we have come to the end of this news brief. Remember, you can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. Also join us on social media. We are on Facebook, X, Instagram, Telegram, and TikTok as well. For Telesur English, I'm Alejandra Garcia. Thank you for watching.